You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. What if I told you that the reason women don't chase you has nothing to do with your looks, money, or status, and everything to do with what's happening inside your mind? What if the very behaviors you think make you attractive are silently doing the opposite, and you don't even realize it? Most men try harder, they explain more. They chase signals, overinvest emotionally, and give away their power hoping it will be noticed. But psychology and Stoic wisdom teach something far more uncomfortable and far more effective. People desire what doesn't need them, what remains composed, what isn't seeking approval. This video isn't about manipulation. It's about alignment, about subtle psychological shifts that change how women feel around you, without you saying more, proving more, or pretending to be someone you're not. These are the same quiet principles that make some men unforgettable while others are overlooked, no matter how hard they try. And here, the key. Each trick builds on the previous one. Miss one and the effect weakens. Stay until the very end and you'll understand not just what makes women chase, but why it works at such a deep psychological level. Watch closely. This might change how you show up forever. Number 1. Emotional self-control under pressure. Emotional self-control under pressure is one of those traits that quietly changes everything about how you move through the world. You feel it most when tension rises, when expectations collide, when silence stretches longer than comfort allows. In those moments, most people reveal their inner chaos without realizing it. You don't have to. You can choose to become the calm center instead. And that choice, repeated often enough, reshapes how you are perceived and how others respond to you. The Stoics understood this deeply. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up as restraint, as steadiness, as the refusal to be dragged into emotional turbulence. When you stop reacting impulsively, you stop handing control to circumstances or to other people's moods. You stay grounded. You stay deliberate. And that quiet composure creates a psychological pull that words never could. When pressure hits, the instinct is to explain yourself, defend your position, or rush to regain emotional balance. But emotional self-control means resisting that urge. It means allowing space between stimulus and response. In that space, you decide who you are going to be. You don't chase clarity. You don't chase reassurance. You don't chase outcomes. You let your behavior communicate what your words don't need to. Calm becomes your default language. This is where attraction shifts, not because you are trying to impress, but because emotional discipline signals inner security. When you don't crumble under pressure, you project a sense of stability that feels rare. You become someone who doesn't need to be managed emotionally, someone who isn't easily shaken, someone who doesn't seek validation when things feel uncertain. That absence of neediness creates curiosity, and curiosity fuels pursuit. Seneca warned, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Pressure isn't the enemy. It's the training ground. Every emotionally charged moment is an invitation to practice self-command. Each time you choose restraint over reaction, you reinforce a new identity. You stop being predictable. You stop being reactive. You stop being emotionally available on demand. Instead, you become selective with your energy. You don't suppress emotions. That's not control, that's avoidance. Real control means acknowledging what you feel without letting it dictate your actions. You feel tension, but you don't rush to dissolve it. You feel uncertainty, but you don't fill the silence. You feel discomfort, but you don't try to fix it immediately. You allow emotions to pass through you like weather, not commands. And the more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. This shift requires daily discipline. Start with awareness. When pressure arises, notice your internal impulses before acting on them. The urge to respond quickly, the urge to explain, the urge to prove. Simply noticing these impulses weakens them. You don't fight them, you observe them. That alone creates distance. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." Change the judgment and the pressure loses its grip. Another powerful habit is intentional pause. When emotions rise, delay your response. Not dramatically, not defensively, just enough to regain authorship over your behavior. Count your breaths, relax your jaw, drop your shoulders. These physical cues tell your nervous system that you are safe, that you are in control. Over time, your body learns calm faster than your mind ever could. You also need to train emotional neutrality in low-stakes moments. Don't wait for intensity. Practice calm when you're mildly irritated, mildly bored, mildly misunderstood. These moments are repetitions in the gym of self-control. Each rep builds capacity. When real pressure arrives, you don't panic. You've been here before. You know how to stay composed. Another exercise is reframing outcomes. Instead of attaching your emotional state to how things should go, detach your self-worth from results altogether. When you stop needing a specific response, you stop broadcasting emotional hunger. You show that your internal state is self-generated. That independence is felt instantly. It changes the dynamic. The one who needs less control holds more power. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you grounded. You still feel deeply, you just don't leak emotion unconsciously. You decide when and how to express yourself. That selectivity creates contrast. When you do open up, it carries weight. When you remain silent, it carries intention. Either way, you are choosing, not reacting. Pressure also reveals boundaries. Emotional self-control allows you to enforce them without drama. You don't argue your limits. You embody them. You don't justify your standards. You live them. And because there's no emotional volatility attached, your boundaries feel non-negotiable. Calm firmness is far more compelling than emotional insistence. You'll notice something else as you practice this. The need to be chased disappears. And paradoxically, that's when pursuit begins. Not because you're manipulating, but because you're no longer seeking emotional safety from others. You already have it within yourself. That self-containment changes the energy completely. End each day with reflection. Ask yourself where you reacted and where you responded, where you held your center and where you lost it. No judgment, just awareness. Improvement follows attention. Over time, emotional self-control stops being something you do and becomes who you are. Remember this: composure under pressure is not about winning moments, it's about mastering yourself. And when you master yourself, everything else rearranges around you. You don't chase, you attract. You don't demand, you invite. You don't react, you decide. And that quiet authority is felt long before it's understood. Number 2, non-reactive responses to tests and provocation. When you stop reacting, everything changes. If you are distressed by anything external, Epictetus wrote, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Read that again and let it land. The moment you truly understand this, you begin to operate on a different level. Non-reactive responses to tests and provocation aren't about playing games or suppressing emotion. They're about mastery, about choosing yourself over impulse, about refusing to hand over your inner state to someone else's behavior. When you no longer flinch, argue, explain, or defend, something subtle but powerful happens. You become grounded, and grounded men are rare. Scarcity creates attraction. Most people react automatically. A comment hits, a look lingers too long, silence stretches, energy shifts, and they rush to fix it. They talk more, they justify, they chase clarity. You've done it before, everyone has. But every reactive move quietly signals that your emotional balance depends on how someone treats you in that moment. That dependence is felt immediately, even if nothing is said. Non-reactivity, on the other hand, communicates something entirely different. You are steady. You are not ruled by mood swings, tests, or pressure. Put it simply, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. This strength isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's calm, contained, and deeply compelling. Here's the shift you need to make. Stop seeing tests and provocations as threats. They are not attacks. They are invitations, unconscious ones, to reveal your emotional center. When you react, you reveal its external. When you don't, you reveal its internal. That's the difference between being led and leading. Non-reactive doesn't mean cold or indifferent. It means measured. It means you pause before responding, not because you're calculating, but because you don't need to rush. Urgency disappears when you trust yourself. And trust in yourself is felt as confidence, not arrogance. You need to train this, not intellectually, but start with silence. Silence is uncomfortable for most people because it removes their sense of control. When something provocative is said, don't rush to fill the space. Let the moment breathe. Let the words sit. You'll notice a strange thing. The tension often dissolves on its own. The mind of the other person starts doing the work for you. Seneca warned against impulsive speech when he said, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Delay is not weakness. Delay is dominance over yourself. Practice giving yourself 2 full breaths before responding to anything that triggers you. 2 breaths sound small, but they are enough to interrupt old patterns. Next, detach your identity from the outcome. This is where most men struggle. They want to be liked, respected, understood right now. That craving fuels reaction. But when you stop tying your self-worth to immediate approval, your responses naturally slow down. You no longer feel the need to win the moment. You're playing a longer game, alignment with who you are. Ask yourself silently, is reacting improving my position or just easing my discomfort? More often than not, it's the latter. Choosing not to react is choosing long-term strength over short-term relief. Another habit to build is neutral acknowledgement. You don't need to agree. You don't need to disagree. You simply recognize what was said without emotional charge. This keeps you centered and prevents escalation. The Stoics believed in responding according to reason, not impulse. Epictetus reminded his students that it is not things themselves that disturb men, but their judgments about them. Change the judgment and the disturbance vanishes. When you hear something provocative, label it internally as noise. Not important, not urgent, just sound passing through. You should also work on body stillness. This is often overlooked, but it's critical. Emotional reactivity leaks through posture, facial tension, restless movement. Train yourself to remain physically relaxed when pressure appears. Shoulders down, jaw unclenched, breath slow. The body leads the mind more than you think. When your body stays calm, your mind follows. This calm becomes contagious. People feel it. They lean toward it. It creates a subtle pull because it contrasts so sharply with the emotional volatility most are used to. Here's a daily exercise you can start immediately. At the end of each day, replay moments where you felt triggered, not to judge yourself, but to observe. Ask, what did I feel in my body? Where did I rush? What would non-reaction have looked like? This reflection builds awareness. Awareness builds choice. Choice builds control. Over time, you'll notice fewer triggers hit as hard. That's not suppression, that's growth. Another powerful practice is voluntary discomfort. Put yourself in situations where you're slightly uncomfortable and practice staying composed. Not proving anything, just staying steady. The Stoics trained this intentionally because they understood that resilience is built before pressure arrives, not during it. When you're used to discomfort, provocation loses its edge. You stop fearing emotional tension because you've already learned to sit with it. As you adopt non-reactivity, something interesting happens. You stop trying to manage perception. You stop strategizing responses. You simply are, and that authenticity is magnetic. People feel safer around emotional stability. They become curious about it. They test it not to break it, but to understand it. When your reactions don't spike, don't collapse, don't escalate, the dynamic shifts. The chase isn't something you force. It emerges naturally when your presence feels grounded and rare. Remember this, non-reactivity is not about withholding emotion. It's about choosing expression consciously. You still speak, you still engage, but you do it from a place of self-command, not reflex. Lived by this daily, reminding himself to meet provocation with calm reason rather than ego. You can do the same. Start small. Practice today. Slow your responses. Breathe before you speak. Let go of the need to correct, impress, or defend. The more you do this, the more you'll notice something profound. You're no longer chasing control. You embody it. Number 3, scarcity created through a full, independent life. Scarcity doesn't come from playing games or pretending to be busy. It comes from being genuinely occupied by a full, independent life, one that doesn't orbit around attention, approval, or outcomes. When your life is rich, structured, and internally rewarding, your time naturally becomes limited, and that limitation is felt, not announced, not explained, felt. As wrote, concentrate every minute like a Roman on doing what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. That seriousness creates gravity. When you stop hovering, stop waiting, stop checking whether someone is leaning toward you or away from you, something shifts. You become harder to access emotionally because you are deeply engaged elsewhere, not distracted, not avoidant, but anchored. And that anchoring creates pull. You don't create scarcity by withholding messages or disappearing strategically. That's fragile. It collapses the moment your intent is exposed. True scarcity emerges when your days are full of pursuits that matter to you whether anyone is watching or not. When your schedule reflects priorities instead of availability. When your mind is occupied with growth, mastery, and direction rather than anticipation. Seneca warned, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Most people waste enormous mental energy wondering how they're perceived. When you stop doing that, you reclaim time, and reclaimed time changes your posture. You move slower. You respond instead of react. You choose instead of chase. That difference is impossible to fake. When you build a life that doesn't require constant emotional feedback, you stop leaking urgency. There's no rush in your words, no pressure in your presence. You don't need to lock anything down because you're not afraid of losing it. That calm is unsettling in a world addicted to reassurance. And it's deeply attractive, not because it's manipulative, but because it signals self-trust. Epictetus put it simply, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Translation: stop managing impressions. Stop curating reactions. Let your life speak without narration. Scarcity grows naturally when your energy is invested inward rather than projected outward. Here, where most people get it wrong. They think independence is emotional distance. It's not. Independence is emotional ownership. You feel fully, but you don't hand responsibility for those feelings to anyone else. You enjoy connection without clinging to it. You appreciate interest without becoming dependent on it. When your happiness isn't negotiable, your presence becomes optional, and optional presence carries weight. You're not needed, you're chosen. That distinction changes everything. People chase what they choose, not what depends on them. To build this kind of scarcity, you have to reorient your daily habits. Start with silence. Not social silence, internal silence. Spend time each day without stimulation, without checking, without input. Let boredom surface. Let restlessness appear. Don't escape it, sit with it. This trains you to stop outsourcing regulation. Then choose one pursuit that demands your full attention and long-term commitment. Not for recognition, not for leverage, for discipline. Something that progresses slowly. Something that can't be rushed. This rewires your relationship with time. You stop measuring days by responses and start measuring them by depth. Another exercise is to deliberately reduce explanation. Notice how often you justify your choices, clarify your intentions, or soften your boundaries with words. Practice letting decisions stand without commentary, not coldly, calmly. You don't owe access to your inner world on demand. Reminded himself, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. The less you overcommunicate, the more space you create. Space invites curiosity. Curiosity fuels pursuit. You also need to audit where your emotional energy goes. Ask yourself, what am I trying to extract from others right now? Validation, certainty, relief from loneliness. Awareness alone weakens the habit. Replace extraction with cultivation. Each time you feel the urge to check, to seek reassurance, to lean forward emotionally, redirect that energy into self-command. Breathe. Slow down. Return to what you were doing. Scarcity is not absence. It's presence directed elsewhere. This doesn't mean you become unavailable or aloof. It means you are available on your terms. You engage fully when you choose to engage. You withdraw fully when it's time to focus inward. No half steps, no emotional hovering. That decisiveness is rare, and rarity is the root of desire. Seneca observed, a man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. When you stop pre-suffering imagined losses, you stop signaling fear, and fearlessness is magnetic. Your goal isn't to be chased, that's a side effect. Your goal is to become someone whose life is already in motion, someone who doesn't need momentum from outside. When others sense that you won't pause your trajectory for attention, they lean in. Not because you demand it, because they want proximity to direction. Scarcity formed this way doesn't expire. It deepens. It compounds. And the more you protect it, the less you have to think about attraction at all. So take action. Simplify your life. Commit to fewer things, but commit harder. Reduce noise. Increase focus. Guard your time like a philosopher guards his thoughts. Let your days be full before anyone else enters them. When you do this consistently, you won't need tricks. You'll have gravity, and gravity doesn't chase, it pulls. Number 4, validation. Restraint instead of approval seeking. Validation, restraint instead of approval seeking is one of those ideas that sounds simple on the surface but quietly rewires the way you move through the world. You're not trying to impress. You're not fishing for reactions. You're not scanning faces, tone, or silence to measure your worth. You decide calmly and deliberately that your internal standards matter more than anyone else's response. And the moment you do that, something shifts. Your energy changes. Your presence steadies. You stop leaning forward, and instead, the world subtly leans toward you. Most men don't realize how often they give away their power through approval seeking. It's not always obvious. It can be hidden behind politeness, over-explaining, constant reassurance, or the urge to be liked. But beneath all of it is the same quiet message: tell me I'm enough. When you operate from that place, your behavior becomes reactive. You adjust your words. You soften your edges. You chase harmony instead of truth. And people feel that even if they can't explain it. Validation restraint is the opposite. It's not coldness. It's not arrogance. It's emotional self-sufficiency. It's you deciding that your actions don't need applause to be valid. The Stoics understood this deeply. Reminded himself, I do not need what others approve of. That wasn't a motivational quote. It was a daily discipline. The idea is simple but demanding. You act according to your values, not according to the crowd's reaction. When you practice validation restraint, you stop outsourcing your confidence. You stop asking the world to confirm what you should already know. And paradoxically, that's when attention begins to flow toward you. Not because you demanded it, but because you no longer need it. What makes this so powerful is that it creates emotional gravity. When you don't rush to be understood, approved of, or praised, you communicate self-trust. You speak when you mean it. You pause without anxiety. You don't fill silence just to relieve tension. That restraint is felt as depth. It signals that your inner world is stable, that your sense of self isn't fragile. Epictetus put it bluntly, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." In other words, stop defending your image. Stop managing perceptions. Let people think what they want. Your job is to live in alignment, not performance. Approval seeking drains energy because it never ends. There's always another reaction to read, another response to chase, another moment of doubt. Validation restraint conserves energy. It brings you back to yourself. You stop asking, "Did that land? Did I say the right thing? Do they like me now?" And you start asking a different question. Was I grounded? Was I honest? Was I composed? That internal shift changes how you carry yourself. Your posture settles, your voice slows, your eyes stop searching. You're no longer trying to win the moment, you're inhabiting it. This is where the psychological pull happens. When you're not trying to secure approval, you create space. Space invites curiosity. Silence invites projection. Restraint invites pursuit. People are naturally drawn to what doesn't beg to be chosen. Seneca captured this when he said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom here isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet. It's the freedom of not needing to be validated to feel whole, and that freedom is felt as strength. To practice this, you need to retrain your reflexes. Start by noticing the impulse to explain yourself. Not eliminating it, just noticing it. Feel the moment when you want to justify a choice, soften an opinion, or seek reassurance. Pause there. Breathe. Let the moment pass without acting on it. This is not suppression, it's restraint. You're teaching your nervous system that nothing bad happens when you don't chase approval. Over time, that pause becomes natural, powerful, almost effortless. Another exercise is to redefine success internally. At the end of the day, don't ask whether you were liked. Ask whether you were centered. Ask whether you reacted emotionally or responded deliberately. Ask whether you acted from fear or principle. Write these questions down. Answer them honestly. This practice builds an inner scoreboard that no one else can control. And once your validation comes from there, external reactions lose their grip on you. You can also train validation restraint through silence. Choose moments where you intentionally say less than you could, not as a tactic but as a discipline. Let your words be intentional, not automatic. Let your presence do some of the talking. Silence isn't emptiness, it's confidence without explanation. Often reminded himself to waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. You don't need to announce who you are. Your restraint reveals it. This mindset doesn't make you distant, it makes you grounded. You still care, you still engage, but you're no longer emotionally dependent on outcomes. You're not trying to pull interest toward you. You're allowing it to arise naturally. And that's the difference people feel. Approval seekers chase. Grounded men attract without effort, not because they manipulate, but because they are internally aligned. Adopting validation restraint is uncomfortable at first. Your ego will protest. Your old habits will push back, but stay with it. Every time you choose self-respect over reassurance, you reinforce a new identity, one rooted in calm, not craving. Over time, this becomes who you are. You stop trying to be chosen, and strangely enough, that's when you start being pursued, not because you asked for it, but because your self-sufficiency makes others want to step closer. Take this seriously. Practice it daily. Let your confidence come from your character, not reactions. Let your calm replace your neediness. As the Stoics knew long ago, the man who governs himself no longer needs permission from the world, and that quiet authority changes everything. Number 5. Calm confidence expressed through silence. Calm confidence expressed through silence is one of the most misunderstood forces in human attraction, mostly because you've been conditioned to believe that confidence must announce itself. It doesn't. Real confidence settles. It slows your breathing. It removes the itch to explain, justify, or prove. When you grow comfortable with silence, something powerful happens inside you. You stop leaking energy. You stop chasing reactions. You stop performing. And paradoxically, this absence of effort creates gravity. People lean in when there is space. Desire grows where there is restraint. As one Stoic philosopher observed, strength reveals itself not through noise but through composure. When you allow silence to exist without rushing to fill it, you communicate that you trust yourself, that you are unshaken by uncertainty, and that you don't need permission to take up space. Silence is not withdrawal, it's presence without desperation. Most people talk to manage anxiety, not to express truth. When you speak less, your words carry weight. When you pause, you show mastery over impulse. And mastery is deeply attractive because it signals inner order. Reminded himself that tranquility comes from governing the mind, not the external world. Silence is one of the simplest ways to practice that governance. You begin to realize that not every moment needs commentary, not every emotion needs expression, and not every thought deserves airtime. When you adopt this mindset, you stop reacting automatically. You respond deliberately. That shift alone separates you from the majority. Calm confidence through silence works because it flips the usual dynamic. Instead of trying to be seen, you allow yourself to be observed. Instead of chasing engagement, you let curiosity build. The Stoics believe that a person who is content within themselves becomes invulnerable to manipulation. When you're silent and relaxed, you're signaling that your sense of worth is not negotiated in real time. You're not fishing for approval. You're not afraid of pauses. You're not rattled by ambiguity. That steadiness creates a subtle tension, and tension is the seed of attraction. Not drama, not chaos, but the quiet tension of someone who is fully grounded. You'll notice that silence forces others to project. When you don't rush to fill the space, people begin to fill it for you, often revealing more than they intend. This isn't a trick you perform, it's a state you inhabit. Epictetus warned that we are disturbed not by events, but by our judgments about them. Silence gives you time to suspend judgment. It keeps you from overcommitting emotionally. It allows you to stay centered while others move around you. And that centeredness is felt instantly. It communicates that you are not controlled by the moment. You are choosing how to engage with it. To cultivate this, you must first break the habit of compulsive expression. Start noticing how often you speak to relieve tension rather than to convey meaning. The next time you feel the urge to fill a pause, resist it. Let the silence breathe. Let your body relax into it instead of tensing up. This is not passive, it's disciplined. Seneca wrote that a person is powerful when they can sit with themselves without distraction. Silence trains that muscle. At first, it may feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is a signal that you're shedding dependence on external feedback. Stay with it. That's where growth happens. A practical exercise you can adopt daily is intentional pausing. Throughout your interactions, practice delaying your response by a few seconds. Not in a calculated way, but in a grounded one. Use that pause to check in with your breath. Feel your feet. Relax your jaw. When you do speak, speak slowly. Fewer words, clearer tone. Another exercise is silent observation. Spend time simply watching your thoughts without reacting to them. This trains you to remain composed when emotions arise. Over time, you'll notice that your need to explain yourself fades. You'll feel less urgency to impress. That inner stillness begins to radiate outward. Calm confidence expressed through silence also reshapes how you see yourself. You stop measuring your value by how well you're received in the moment. You begin to trust your presence without embellishment. This trust changes your posture, your eye contact, your pace. You move more deliberately. You listen more deeply. And listening, when done without an agenda, is magnetic. The Stoics emphasized attention as a form of respect, both for others and for oneself. When you listen fully and speak selectively, you demonstrate self-respect, and people respond to that instinctively. You don't need to withdraw or become aloof. Silence is not coldness. It's warmth without noise. It's confidence without performance. It's knowing that you don't have to chase to be chosen. By practicing restraint, you allow others to feel your steadiness. By staying calm, you create contrast in a world addicted to stimulation, and contrast draws attention. Make silence your ally. Let it sharpen your awareness. Let it deepen your composure. With time, you'll notice that when you stop trying to attract, attraction starts moving toward you. Number 6. Unpredictability without inconsistency. Unpredictability without inconsistency is about becoming mentally spacious, not chaotic. It's the art of being grounded enough that your presence feels alive, never stale, yet stable enough that nothing about you feels unsafe or erratic. Most people misunderstand this. They think unpredictability means playing games, withholding affection randomly, or behaving in ways that contradict their values. That kind of behavior doesn't create attraction. It creates confusion and quiet distrust. What actually draws people in, especially women, is the sense that you are deeply rooted in who you are, yet never fully readable. You are calm but not boring, structured but not rigid, familiar but never routine. And the moment you internalize this, the way you move through interactions changes almost immediately. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology tried to label it. Wrote, "Be like the rocky headland on which the waves constantly break. It stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it." Notice what he's pointing at. Not randomness, not volatility, firmness, a stable core. The unpredictability comes from the waves, not the rock. When you are centered, when your values don't shift based on approval or reaction, your external behavior gains a quiet unpredictability because it's no longer driven by neediness or scripts. You stop reacting the way people expect you to. You pause. You choose. You move on your own internal clock. That alone is disarming. What makes this powerful is that most people are painfully consistent in the worst way. They text at the same pace, respond emotionally the same way every time, give reassurance on demand, explain themselves endlessly, and signal their intentions far too early. Their behavior is predictable because it's governed by fear, fear of loss, fear of silence, fear of being misunderstood. When you step out of that pattern, not by playing cold but by being internally complete, you become harder to mentally categorize. And the mind hates unfinished patterns. It leans in. It chases resolution. This doesn't require you to change your personality. It requires you to stop over-explaining it. Seneca warned, "He who explains himself too much gives others the power to define him." When you always clarify, justify, and smooth over every interaction, you remove mystery. You make yourself easy to file away. Unpredictability without inconsistency means you let your actions speak, but you don't rush to narrate them. You allow space. You let silence do some of the work. You resist the urge to always be available, not as a tactic, but as a boundary. Your life doesn't orbit anticipation. It moves forward whether anyone is watching or not. Here, where most men get this wrong, they think unpredictability means being emotionally unavailable. It doesn't. Emotional absence feels hollow. What works is emotional self-sufficiency. There's a big difference. You're present when you choose to be, fully so, but you're not dependent on constant interaction to feel steady. Epictetus said, "If you want to be invincible, make yourself independent of the things you cannot control." When your mood, tone, and decisions are no longer dictated by how someone responds to you, your behavior naturally becomes less predictable. Not because you're trying to surprise, but because you're no longer following a script written by external validation. You can start training this immediately. One simple exercise is to slow your internal reactions. When you feel the impulse to respond instantly, whether emotionally or verbally, pause. Not to manipulate, just to choose. Ask yourself, is this response coming from clarity or from tension? Over time, this pause creates a gap between stimulus and action. In that gap, unpredictability is born, because now your responses are intentional, not automatic. They don't follow patterns people can map out in advance. Another practice is to anchor yourself in routines that are invisible to others. Internal consistency matters more than external consistency. Daily reflection, physical discipline, quiet solitude, mental rehearsal, these stabilize you. And paradoxically, the more stable you are internally, the more fluid and spontaneous you appear externally. You stop needing to prove continuity. You stop announcing plans. You stop seeking confirmation. Your presence becomes lighter, less traceable, harder to pin down. There's also power in not always revealing your emotional trajectory. This doesn't mean suppressing emotion. It means not broadcasting it. Not every feeling needs translation. Not every thought needs airtime. When you share selectively, when you allow people to discover layers instead of being handed the entire map, curiosity grows. The Stoics often emphasized restraint not as repression but as mastery. You're not hiding, you're packing, and packing creates pull. Try this mental drill. For the next few days, observe how often you act to maintain predictability, how often you respond just to reassure, how often you explain yourself to avoid discomfort. Don't judge it, just notice it. Awareness alone begins to break the pattern. Then gradually start removing one unnecessary explanation per interaction, one emotional reflex, one anticipatory move. Replace it with calm presence, with grounded silence, with a response that feels true, even if it's not what's expected. Unpredictability without inconsistency is not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming less reactive, less eager, less performative, and more rooted. When you live this way, people feel it immediately. There's a subtle tension around you, not anxiety, but intrigue. You don't rush toward outcomes. You don't cling to impressions. You let attraction breathe. And in that space, the chase begins naturally, without force, without games, without you ever having to ask for it. Take this seriously. Practice it daily. Let your inner discipline shape your outer freedom. As reminded himself and now reminds you, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. That strength is what makes you unpredictable in the right way. And once you embody it, nothing about you feels ordinary again. Number 7. Strong boundaries, enforced without explanation. Strong boundaries enforced without explanation is one of those ideas that sounds simple, almost too simple, until you actually try to live it. And when you do, everything changes. Not because you're trying to control anyone, not because you're playing games, but because you finally stop leaking your energy through over-explaining, justifying, and negotiating your self-respect away. You decide, quietly and firmly, that your standards are not a debate, and that decision alone alters how you are perceived. Most people don't realize how much attraction is tied to emotional posture. When you explain yourself endlessly, you're unconsciously asking for permission to exist as you are. You're saying, please understand me so I can be allowed to hold this line. Strong boundaries do the opposite. They say, this is where I stand. You can respond however you choose. That calm certainty is rare, and rarity creates pull. You don't need to announce your strength. You let it be felt. Stoic philosophy has always emphasized this inner firmness. Epictetus warned that if you want to improve, you must be willing to appear foolish to those who misunderstand you. That's the heart of boundaries without explanation. You release the need to be seen as reasonable, kind, or agreeable in every moment. You accept that not everyone will like your limits, and you don't rush in to soften them. The paradox is that the less you try to manage reactions, the more powerful your presence becomes. You may notice an internal discomfort when you first stop explaining yourself. That's conditioning talking. You've been trained to believe that silence equals guilt, that firmness equals cruelty, that boundaries must be justified to be valid. They don't. A boundary is not an argument, it's a statement of self-knowledge. Wrote that a person should stand straight, not be straightened. That line wasn't about arrogance. It was about self-alignment. When you explain less, you align more. What makes this psychologically magnetic is that it creates a subtle tension. When you don't overclarify, the other person has to fill in the blanks. The human mind hates unresolved space. It leans in, it wonders, it replays interactions. Not because you manipulated anything, but because you didn't over-deliver reassurance. You trusted yourself enough to stop talking. That restraint signals confidence far louder than words ever could. This doesn't mean you become cold or dismissive. There's a difference between emotional control and emotional shutdown. Strong boundaries are warm, calm, and immovable. You can be respectful without being porous. You can be kind without being flexible where it matters. Seneca wrote that he who is brave is free. Boundaries are a form of freedom. They free you from the reflex to defend your choices, and that freedom shows. If you want to adopt this habit, start with awareness. Notice how often you explain yourself when you don't need to. Notice how quickly you rush to clarify, soften, or justify a decision that already feels right in your body. The moment you catch that impulse, pause, breathe, say less, or say nothing at all. Silence, when chosen deliberately, is not weakness, it's discipline. Here's a simple exercise. For the next few days, whenever you set a boundary, limit your response to one sentence. No follow-ups, no extra context, no emotional padding, just the decision. Let the discomfort rise and fall without fixing it. That discomfort is your old pattern dissolving. Stay with it. You're teaching your nervous system that you don't need approval to hold your line. Another practice is mental rehearsal. Before conversations, decide in advance where your boundary is and how you'll express it simply. Not perfectly, simply. The Stoics believed preparation was a form of peace. When you prepare internally, you don't scramble externally. You don't explain because you don't panic. You already know who you are in that moment. Over time, something subtle happens. You stop trying to be chosen. You start choosing. And that shift is felt immediately. People sense when you are centered in yourself rather than orbiting their reactions. Attraction grows in the space where self-respect is non-negotiable. You're no longer persuading, you're presenting. This approach also filters the right responses naturally. When you explain less, you reveal more. You reveal who respects boundaries and who resists them. You reveal who leans in with curiosity and who pushes for control. That clarity is invaluable. The Stoics valued clarity above comfort. They understood that a calm life requires firm edges. You don't need to announce that you're adopting this mindset. You embody it quietly. You stop arguing with discomfort. You stop managing perceptions. You let your actions speak and your silence do the rest. In a world addicted to noise, restraint stands out. So take this seriously. Practice it daily. Catch yourself mid-explanation and stop. Feel the urge to justify and let it pass. Remind yourself that your standards are not a presentation, they're a posture. As advised, waste no more time arguing about what a good person should be. Be one. Strong boundaries enforced without explanation are not a trick. They're a decision. And once you make it, everything downstream begins to change. Number 8. Detachment from outcomes and expectations. Detachment from outcomes and expectations is not about indifference, it's about power. And once you truly understand that distinction, the way you show up around women changes in a way that feels subtle on the surface, yet deeply unsettling to the patterns they're used to. You stop leaning forward emotionally. You stop waiting for reactions. You stop measuring your worth by how things unfold. And paradoxically, that's when pursuit often flips direction. Wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That sentence alone contains the entire foundation of this principle. When you detach from outcomes, you are no longer negotiating your internal state with the external world. You're not hopping for a text to feel calm. You're not needing interest to feel validated. You're not chasing certainty to escape discomfort. You are grounded in yourself first. Everything else becomes optional, not essential. Most men don't realize how loudly expectations speak, even when no words are said. Expectation leaks through tone, packing, eye contact, and energy. It shows up as subtle urgency, as overinvestment too early, as the silent question underneath every interaction: is this going where I want it to go? When you're attached to outcomes, you unconsciously pressure the moment, and pressure kills curiosity. Detachment removes that pressure entirely. It creates space. And human psychology is drawn to space far more than force. Detachment doesn't mean you don't desire, it means you don't cling. You can want something without bending your spine around it. You can be interested without being dependent. This is where many people get confused. They think detachment equals coldness or emotional withdrawal. It doesn't. It equals emotional self-sufficiency. Seneca put it plainly: he suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary. Expectations are future suffering pulled into the present. Detachment dissolves that unnecessary weight. When you release expectations, you stop trying to manage impressions. You're no longer performing for a result. You speak when you mean it. You pause without fear. You allow silence without rushing to fill it. You listen without rehearsing. That calm presence is rare because most people are internally negotiating for approval. When you're not, it stands out. Not loudly, quietly. And quiet confidence is far more magnetic than loud certainty. There's also a deeper layer here that few talk about. Detachment makes you unpredictable in the healthiest way. Not chaotic, not inconsistent, simply unhooked. When someone can't easily read whether you're trying to win something from them, their mind naturally leans in. Not because of manipulation, but because unresolved patterns draw attention. When you're detached, you don't chase reassurance. You don't rush milestones. You don't need to define things prematurely. You let dynamics reveal themselves instead of forcing clarity too soon. Epictetus taught, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly. That mindset shifts your entire emotional posture. You become responsive instead of reactive. You observe instead of overinterpreting. You move forward but without dragging expectations behind you like chains. And that emotional freedom is felt, even if it's never consciously identified. Now, this is not something you just understand intellectually. It's a habit you build, a discipline you practice daily. Start by noticing where your mind runs ahead of the present moment, where it imagines outcomes, scripts, futures, confirmations. Every time you catch that, gently pull yourself back to now, back to breath, back to posture, back to what is actually happening, not what you hope will happen. This alone begins to loosen the grip of expectation. Another practice is emotional independence training. Before any interaction, remind yourself, quietly, without drama, that your mood will not be negotiated. Say it internally: nothing I receive today defines me. Not interest, not distance, not enthusiasm, not silence. This is not suppression, it's alignment. You're aligning your emotional center with your values, not with someone else's reactions. You can also practice intentional non-attachment by deliberately letting moments unfold without steering them. Resist the impulse to accelerate. Resist the urge to secure outcomes. Let conversations end naturally. Let interest rise or fall without interference. This requires trust in yourself, and trust is felt. People sense when you are not trying to extract something from them. Detachment also sharpens your standards. When you're not outcome-focused, you stop tolerating misalignment just to keep momentum. You don't over-rationalize. You don't over-invest in potential. You observe reality clearly, and clarity breeds respect, including self-respect. Again reminds us, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Detachment allows you to act from principle rather than fear of loss. What makes this so powerful is that it shifts the emotional labor. Instead of you carrying the weight of anticipation, uncertainty, and hope, you simply remain present. That presence invites others to step forward if they choose. And if they don't, nothing inside you collapses. That stability is rare, and rarity creates value. So begin today, not tomorrow, not after the next interaction. Today, practice releasing mental narratives. Practice wanting without needing. Practice showing up fully, then letting go completely. The moment you stop chasing outcomes is the moment you start attracting attention without effort. Not because you're playing a trick, but because you've reclaimed your inner authority. And that ultimately is what makes people chase. Not your strategies, not your words, not your timing, but your unshakable sense that you are already whole, with or without any particular result. Number 9, deep presence and attentive listening. Deep presence and attentive listening is not a tactic you perform on someone. It's a state you train yourself to enter. And once you do, everything about how people respond to you changes, quietly, almost invisibly, but powerfully. You stop chasing reactions. You stop forcing momentum. You become still. And that stillness pulls attention toward you without asking permission. Most people listen to respond. You learn to listen to understand. That shift alone places you far ahead of the crowd. When you are deeply present, you are not scanning for approval, not rehearsing what to say next, not trying to impress. You are here, fully, calmly, grounded in the moment. That presence is rare, and rarity creates value without effort. As warned, most of what we say and do is unnecessary. You feel this truth when you stop filling silence and start holding it. Presence begins internally. If your mind is restless, your body leaks that restlessness. You might nod, smile, say the right words, but something feels off. So the first habit you adopt is internal quiet. Every day you practice slowing your thoughts instead of chasing them. You sit with stillness long enough that it stops feeling uncomfortable. This is not passive. It is disciplined. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." You take that literally, not just in conversation, but in life. When you listen attentively, you don't interrupt with stories, fixes, or opinions. You don't steer the conversation back to yourself. You let the other person unfold at their own pace. You stay curious, not reactive. This creates a subtle emotional safety. People relax when they feel unjudged and unhurried. And when someone relaxes around you, they associate that calm with you. They want more of it. They seek it out. Not consciously at first, but instinctively. You begin to notice how powerful silence is. Silence done right is not awkward, it's spacious. It gives the other person room to go deeper, to reveal more than they plan to. You don't rush to fill gaps. You hold eye contact without intensity, without demand. You let pauses breathe. This alone signals confidence. Not loud confidence, composed confidence. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself. The trick is that you're not doing this to get chased. You're doing it because it's who you are becoming. Desire follows alignment. Seneca wrote, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." When you're scattered, your attention diluted, people feel it. When you're focused, present, anchored, your attention feels like a gift, and people chase what feels valuable. To train this, you adopt simple but demanding exercises. One is single tasking. When someone speaks to you, you put everything else away. No mental multitasking, no planning, just listening. Another is reflective listening. You paraphrase what you heard, not to sound clever, but to ensure clarity. You slow the pace of the exchange. You ask fewer questions, but better ones. And then you stop. You let the answer land. You also practice emotional restraint. You don't overreact. You don't rush to validate or challenge. You let emotions surface and pass. This emotional steadiness is deeply attractive because it signals inner order. Reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. When you embody this, people feel safe expressing themselves around you. Safety creates attachment. Attachment creates pursuit. There's another layer here that most miss. Deep listening makes the other person feel seen, not evaluated, and being seen without pressure is addictive. You're not trying to extract something from the interaction. You're not performing, you're witnessing. That's rare in a world full of noise and distraction. Over time, people begin to lean toward you emotionally, then psychologically. They start initiating. They start seeking your attention, not because you demanded it, but because you didn't. You must also let go of the urge to be interesting. This is crucial. The moment you stop trying to impress, you become impressive. Your calm attention does the work for you. You speak less, but what you say carries weight. You choose words deliberately. You allow mystery to remain. As Seneca said, the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Delay applies to speech too. You pause, you consider. You respond only when necessary. Make this a daily discipline. In every interaction, ask yourself, am I fully here or am I waiting to speak? When you catch yourself drifting, bring your attention back, gently, without judgment. Presence is a muscle. It strengthens with use. At first, it feels unnatural. Then it feels grounding. Eventually, it becomes who you are. And something interesting happens when you embody this consistently. You stop caring whether someone chases you or not. You enjoy the moment as it is. That detachment is magnetic, not cold, not indifferent, just unneedy. Epictetus put it simply, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Be content to listen. Be content to be quiet. Be content to let others reveal themselves first. Deep presence and attentive listening is not a trick you turn on and off. It's a way of moving through the world. And when you live this way, pursuit becomes a byproduct, not a goal. You don't chase. You don't persuade. You allow. And in that space you create, others move toward you on their own. Adopt this habit. Practice it daily. Let it reshape how you show up. The shift will be subtle, but the results will not be. Number 10. Self-respect demonstrated through decisive action. Self-respect isn't something you announce, it's something you move with. And one of the clearest ways it reveals itself is through decisive action. Not loud action, not impulsive action. Calm, deliberate, final action. When you decide, you move. When you move, you don't look back for approval. That alone changes how you're perceived. People feel it before they understand it. Women especially sense it because decisiveness signals inner order. It says you are not fragmented inside. You are not negotiating with your doubts every second. You know where you stand, and that creates gravity. Wrote, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Decisive action is exactly that. You stop explaining your values and start embodying them. You don't hover, you don't hesitate endlessly. You don't ask for permission to act in alignment with your standards. When you say yes, it's a real yes. When you say no, it's complete. That consistency is rare, and rarity creates attraction. Not because you're trying to be impressive, but because you're no longer trying to be liked. You're being accurate with yourself. Here's the shift you need to make. Stop waiting to feel ready. Readiness is a byproduct of movement, not a prerequisite. Decisive men don't feel more confident, they act more clearly. Every time you delay a decision you already know the answer to, you leak self-respect. Every time you act cleanly, even when it's uncomfortable, you reinforce it. And self-respect compounds. People begin to adjust around you because they can feel that you won't bend just to keep things pleasant. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be and then do what you have to do. Notice the order. Identity first, action second. Not endless analysis in between. When you decide who you are, your actions naturally follow. Decisiveness is not about speed, it's about alignment. You pause only long enough to listen to your principles, then you move. No theatrics, no second guessing. That kind of movement feels solid, and solidity is magnetic. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth when your actions already declare it. Decisive action tells the world you trust yourself. And trust is contagious. When you hesitate, others hesitate around you. When you move with calm certainty, others relax. Women feel safe around that energy because it's predictable without being boring. It's firm without being rigid. It says, I can lead myself, so I don't need to control you. There's also something subtle happening beneath the surface. Decisive action removes emotional bargaining. You're not trading authenticity for attention. You're not performing patience while secretly resenting it. You act when action is required. You step back when alignment is lost. That clarity creates tension in a healthy way. It leaves space. It leaves unanswered questions. And that space invites pursuit without you ever asking for it. Seneca warned, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. Indecision is exactly that, drifting. When you drift, you try to make every wind work. When you decide, you choose a direction and let the rest go. This applies internally first. Decide what you tolerate. Decide how you respond. Decide when you disengage. The moment those decisions are made internally, your external behavior simplifies. No over-explaining. No over-investing. No chasing clarity from people who haven't earned it. Now, this isn't about forcing outcomes. It's about refusing to abandon yourself in the process. Decisive action can look like stepping forward, but it can also look like stepping away without drama. Silence can be decisive. Stillness can be decisive. What matters is that you know why you're doing it and that you do it fully. Half measures create confusion. Full measures create respect. Here's a practical exercise you can start today. For the next 7 days, notice every moment you delay a decision you already feel internally resolved. Write it down. Don't judge it, just observe it. Then, in the moment it happens again, act within 10 seconds, not recklessly, honestly. This trains your nervous system to associate self-trust with safety. You'll feel resistance at first. That's normal. Resistance is just the old habit trying to keep control. Another exercise, define 3 non-negotiables for how you show up. Not what you want from others, how you act. Decide them clearly. Then practice acting on them without announcing them. Let your behavior carry the message. This rewires your sense of identity. You stop asking, how am I being perceived? And start asking, am I aligned? That internal shift is powerful. You should also practice decisiveness in small, low-stakes areas. Choose faster, commit fully, finish what you start. These micro-decisions stack. Over time, you'll notice something interesting. You'll need less reassurance, less validation, less explanation. Your presence alone will do the work. And when that happens, attraction becomes a side effect, not a goal. Reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Decisive action is the expression of that power. You're not trying to control outcomes. You're controlling your response. You're choosing who you are in motion. And that is deeply attractive because it's rare, grounded, and unmistakably real. So stop rehearsing decisions in your head. Stop negotiating with hesitation. Decide, act, adjust if needed, but don't freeze. Every clean action strengthens your self-respect. And self-respect, when lived rather than spoken, makes people lean in without knowing why. If there's one thing to remember, it's this. Attraction is never about chasing, proving, or performing. It's about who you become when you no longer need anything from anyone. The men who are chased aren't louder, flashier, or more manipulative. They're grounded, composed, and emotionally unshakable. They move with intention. They speak when it matters. And they're perfectly comfortable walking away. Every psychological principle you learn today works only when it comes from inner discipline, not strategy. When you stop trying to control outcomes and start mastering yourself, people feel it. They sense the calm, the certainty, the quiet strength that doesn't beg for validation. So don't rush to apply everything at once. Absorb it. Practice restraint. Let your behavior change before your words ever do. Attraction isn't something you demand. It's something others discover when you're no longer seeking approval. If this video resonated with you, make sure you like it, subscribe, and stay with this channel. We're not here to teach tricks. We're here to build men who are respected, desired, and unshaken by the world. And remember, the moment you stop chasing is often the moment you're chased.